we're fighting an invisible enemy. It's not as simple as fighting another country in war. It's not a mainstream issue in media. It's not healthcare or taxes. It doesn't affect people in an extremely visible or impactful way. In fact, it may not even affect you in your lifetime. What is this invisible enemy? Climate change. Climate change is a lot like the coronavirus. As a species, we were slow to respond to the virus, despite how simple the preparation was to respond. The US dealt with it so inadequately, because we didn't and still don't really see it. It wasn't until it affected people in a visible way, as they saw the people around them die, that any action was taken. Once we're made aware of something, we're pretty capable humans. We were able to create a vaccine for COVID-19 that I'm sure at some point will be permanent in society. We can fight things that are invisible because we have science to understand the things that are unseen. But climate change responses won't be as simple as a vaccine, a few masks, and social distancing. What do? How do we make climate change visible? First, we need to make production visible. Think again about the process of phone manufacture. Imagine each step connected by a chain, from extraction of the raw material, to processing, to transporting across the globe, into a store, and finally into your hand. Take for a minute and look around you. Find a product. I want you to try to imagine everything that was involved in the production of this. If you took some time to think of one, you'll quickly realize how complicated it gets. It becomes a web of many different things. Some you may not have even factored into your chain. As we think of solutions to the complicated problems in our production systems, I think it's important to realize that we can replace a lot of links in the chains of production without breaking it. We have an existing chain of electricity. All we need to do is change the source. We have a chain of food production. Maybe we just need to make small changes in how it's produced and transported. And in the chain of transportation, all that's needed is changes in how we travel. Whether that be making existing modes of transportation more efficient, like electric, or just making them public. To think of solutions, we need to completely change our mindset of how to connect things together. In our chain of food, maybe reconsider what a proper diet consists of. Maybe we eat too much meat. Or in how we produce food, maybe we should limit the things that we offer and invest money in teaching people how to cook raw materials. In our chain of electricity, we can change the source of our energy. Maybe we should have local level electricity, like solar or wind farms for each neighborhood or city. There's an obvious challenge in trying to completely rethink production. For quite a while, we've done it the best way we knew how, and it more or less works. The population keeps growing, people are living longer lives with a higher quality of life than ever before. When technology was first developing, I don't think there was this malicious intent. I think we just weren't aware of the impacts of our decisions. But now that we know these impacts, it's time to change how we execute production. The solutions we need are required at the global, national, and local levels. Global is extremely tricky. Changing decisions nationally or globally have the largest impact, but they're the trickiest. We're not united. We're multiple countries with multiple objectives and completely different governmental and bureaucratic systems. Even in the United States, we're not united on our climate response. Since the passage of the AB 32 in 2006, California has been involved in groundbreaking climate action, but no other state has followed this initiative. And I think the challenge is that most people aren't willing to invest money. It's likely going to take subsidies to incentivize everyone to make changes. There's so much more potential if the government makes renewable electricity an equally competitive price, or makes processes like recycling widely available to people. But although the investment would more likely come from a larger level, such as the national or state level, execution is always done at the local level. Becoming involved in the individual steps at a local level can influence the larger levels. If you want to take steps towards a sustainable, thriving future for the world and for mankind, there are easy things you can do. And your actions fall into two major categories: individual changes and political action. We could make our life as waste-free as possible, and I'll tell you, as someone who spent years focusing on the impacts of every decision and purchase, it requires a lot of stress. Privileged people are really the only ones capable of making these type of individual changes. Making your life as waste-free as possible, or simply recycling, takes a lot. You need to be educated enough to know the guidelines, like cleaning, removing the labels, or sorting. You need to have enough money and time to follow these guidelines easily. You need to live or purchase your products in a location that has recycling. And if not, you need transportation to a place that recycles. Are you willing to carry around the containers if you don't have access to recycling? And those are just the challenges of recycling. What about the impacts of our diets? We know it produces less carbon emissions to eat less meat, but when someone has limited access to food, it can be almost impossible to eat a meat-free diet with the right nutrients. Many people are not privileged or knowledgeable enough to take individual actions as consumers. And you know what? That's okay. There's this idea of an indeterminacy of outcomes in economy, but I think its idea can be applied to philosophy and decision-making in general. There's so much uncertainty in our predictions of the future. We can attempt to interpret the economy or the impacts of our decisions as consumers, but they depend on so many factors that there's no way to be certain of the outcomes. Take, for example, the dairy industry. You may find it wise to reduce your milk consumption because you see the amount of emissions it takes to raise cows. But you, as an individual, choosing one week not to buy milk won't have a clear consequence on the industry as a whole. There have been many times where dairy products do not sell, and the government pays the farmers for the lost products so their practices can continue. As a whole, your decisions as a consumer have small and indeterminate consequences on the market. Where little actions in your consumer habits can reduce the impact you directly have in emissions, but not so much the market as a whole, you can make a real difference through political action. The government influences the abilities companies have and the standards they're held to, and you can get involved in the decisions your local government makes. There's this awesome nonprofit organization called Defend Our Future. They're a group of people dedicated to empowering and inspiring young people to get involved in climate change and clean energy solutions. They provide a lot of information about how to get involved and what you need to do. Their biggest suggestion is to meet with your representative. Talk to them about what you want to see in your own community, and see if you can work with them to create solutions. And don't be scared, your representatives are regular people. You may want to dress a bit professional and come prepared, but it's largely just having a conversation and getting your voice heard. Before you meet with a representative, you want to fully understand the systems in where you live. Think about systems like how people are fed, how they're housed, how people move around, or how we clean up. There are solutions like changing access to recycling, making food production easier for those who live in food deserts. There are things like composting organic material, or any sort of waste management in general. And lastly, in terms of our infrastructure, we can look at how roads and buildings are made, and have standards for efficiency and low emissions in concrete production. And when having your voice heard, you don't need to be angry and upset and blame the people that are in power. Help them come up with solutions. Talk to them about what you want to see in your own community and in the world. If we distract ourselves by placing moral judgments and blame on decisions whose impacts we largely can't control, we won't ever be able to come up with solutions that everyone want to participate in. In fact, don't be angry at all, especially at yourself. Don't beat yourself up if you can't recycle something or you have to buy things in plastic because that's what's in your budget. We're part of a society that hasn't yet created a good system for any of this. But the people who determine if you have local level recycling or good food systems is your local government, and you have influence on that. I see a bright future in the leaders to come. I'm excited to see what Biden does in his term as president. He's talked about ensuring that the US achieves 100% clean energy no later than 2050. And he wants to rally the rest of the world to meet the threat of climate change. He's looking at investments in infrastructure, the auto industry, transit, the power sector, buildings, housing, innovation, agriculture, conservation, and environmental justice. The US could follow other countries into a future of sustainability and could even do it better. Despite being a part of a destructive society, there can be a bright future ahead of us. Maybe not in this generation, but definitely in the ones to come. There's still a path forward. We have a chance. And it won't be happy-go-lucky. People are dying, and we have to live with the consequences of our actions. You're going to see bad, but I'm sorry, that's just the consequences of what we've been doing as a species. But if you don't see the bad, you'll never know your place to make the future better. We have a chance to make the future better moving forward. We can mitigate a lot of the problems that are coming, but we have to act now to ensure the smallest amount of damage possible. Thanks for watching. I'd love to hear your opinions and your plans moving forward in the comments section. If you live in the Houston area, I'd love to discuss more about how we can come together to talk to our local representatives to start making changes in our community.